Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and today I kind of wanted to talk to you about a character I've been working on that was inspired by this Mjolnir Crit Inquisitor that I played last league that some of you may remember that I started playing around with again for a few minutes here or there, and it just kind of got me thinking I want to play something like this again because it was so much fun. So as you can remember, from previous videos, the Mjolnir character was essentially just Cyclone Inquisitor, lots of arcs, and it worked pretty damn well, and it was rather fast and very enjoyable. And just from this arc sort of chain, satisfying, aesthetically pleasing lifestyle, I really wanted to try and make this character again, especially with a few changes since the last patch. Most notably, we have let me get rid of Blood Rage real quick. Most notably, it was Shield Charge coming into play. So it's as easy as swapping Shield Charge into the setup. And where are we? Still pretty cheap on mana. Probably have to drop an aura or something, doesn't matter. And it turns the character into something kind of completely different as far as how it plays, how fast it goes, and its efficiency. Right, so Shield Charge, I kind of wanted to keep this in mind when playing a new version of this on Prophecy, because it would have much better clear speed and much worse single target. Now, that's kind of neither here nor there. It's not really the best idea to have a much better amount of clear speed than single target, because the build already had really good clear speed. It had kind of average single target, but I wanted to play around with this anyway, which inspired me to start leveling the next character, which now looks something like this. Now, I was trying to keep somewhat of an open mind with how this character was going to turn out. I wanted to either use Mjolnir or cast on Crit to achieve the desired outcome with an Inquisitor, and hopefully Arc somewhere in the setup, and Shield Charge mostly for clear speed. This is the end result. Because Mjolnir requires something like level 60 to start using, I had to level with something else, and I was leveling with Cast on Crit from level 38 onwards, and as I was going with it, I was trying to figure out the optimal setup, and I landed on Vortex plus Arc as the two main killers, and then Ice Nova as my third spell, and it started to work really well, so I've just stuck to it because Mjolnir is kind of uncomfortable to build around, and I didn't really feel it was totally necessary for this build since it was going so well and just clearing so nicely. The other problem with Mjolnir Shield Charge is your proc rate becomes pretty garbage on single target since you just have 30% chance to proc your spells, and it'll just be 2 arcs or 3 arcs if I put that in my setup, and no real heavy single target hitters, and it just ends up being a little flaccid in the long term for your single target, whereas this build still maintains somewhat of a decent single target because you can have something like 80% proc chance, maybe even 90, while attacking with the shield charge on your single target. Still very much unideal, unoptimal, whatever, and it's not what you want for your single target. You do want Cyclone if you want to focus on a more complete build, but for the pure clear speed, this has been absolutely incredible for me. Now, I don't want to focus too much entirely on this character and its current setup, because I don't think it's optimal. I'm still figuring it out and still going through the motions with it at the moment. And I do believe, in my current mindset, that this life-based version is the weakest of the versions I can make. I think CI would be stronger, and then ultimately a low-life version would be the best possible outcome for this build. So quite likely by tomorrow I'll be respeccing into CI, but I will show off this life-based version if you guys would like, because it's probably the cheapest and easiest to start, though it is the weakest for the endgame maps, because I can only hit about 5k life, and ultimately that's going to mean I die to things like tier 14 and 15 map bosses, potentially some other tough map mods like volatiles, that sort of shit. But if you just want to play this and get yourself some serious clear speed like I've been doing, I've been ramping up to 300, 400 million XP an hour in even the mid-level 80s. It's still quite a lot of fun. I do recommend you try it. I don't think it's too bad at all in terms of what you pay, what you get out of it, but ultimately I do think a energy shield based version of this build is something I'll be showcasing in the long run. I do, however, still want to show you what a basically regular, normal Atziri run looks like with a pretty geared version of the build. Meaning I do have a 6 link right now, I do have most of the passives and damage I want filled out, and gem levels and all that, and it does still perform admirably enough on single target. Ultimately, it's pretty bad for single target when compared to, let's say, the Cyclone version of this exact same build, but I do want to show you that once you get geared up, it can still do what you need it to for the lower level content without feeling too horrible. For Atziri herself, I take out Arc and I replace it with Conk Effect, so I'm only running 2 spells in this current version here. It's just Ice Nova and Vortex doing all of the work, and as you can see, it actually hits really hard and freezes the split phase ad, giving me quite a lot of comfort in what I'm killing there, and still enough damage, once I have my flasks up at the very least, to kill off the boss fairly quickly and not be too worried about it. But if you actually want this build to perform well against single target, let's say the entire Atziri zone even, or really high tier bosses, you do want to swap into Cyclone, and I don't currently have any examples of that to show you, but the next video probably will. The single target output is probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 times greater than the shield charge version. While the shield charge version is purely there for your clear speeds, for your feels good man. I'll go over the setup real quick though, for if you want to see what the current life-based character entails, though like I said, I do think I'm going to be swapping this into CI, or maybe even low life in the long run. Currently 4600 life, level 87, stats are pretty easy to come by, and I'm running a pretty shitty Golden Chris Vegan dagger, so I went with a fairly slow one and high base crit and high crit implicit, just because I don't think it matters too much for your shield charge how fast you have a base attack speed on your dagger. It matters more for Cyclone, I do believe, but this is just fine for me. It costs something like 8 chaos, so then regaled it and put a little crit roll on it, and it did hit a nice attack speed roll, so it's not a complete brick, but it's nothing special at all. The only thing really worth anything in my build right now is the Carcass Jack, and that's because it's a 6-link, though I would be perfectly content with wearing a Tabula if I didn't have that, at least for the time being, and hopefully, or maybe just getting a bit more defense elsewhere. Besides that, actually Rat's Nest with 3 additional chain arcs is also worth something, I suppose. I paid 1x for it, because it's not a terribly in-demand enchant, but it's also not that beneficial for the build, because Arc is only one of your 3 spells, and you're not even using it on something like Atziri, for example. But it is a nice little clear speed gain. You could probably go any one of several directions, like Vortex Radius, or maybe Ice Nova Radius, maybe Shield Charge Speed, attack speed. Plenty of stuff you could do with your Helm enchant. I chose to go for the Arc one. Wearing a Rat's Nest, boots, tri-res, life, movement speed, self-found those, they're pretty damn nice. Face breakers, as always, plenty of crit multi. Pretty average belt, just some flask duration there. Really average ring, I need to replace that. And just a life resist ring, pretty average as well, because fizz damage does nothing for me. And I reused my Cockspray's amulet, as well as reusing the life-based Blade Vortex shield. So for the actual setup, like I said, I have shield charge attached to cast on crit, absolute staples right there. Then you have Vortex, that's your heavy hitter, it's kind of most of your single target damage, but it also does a decent bit of AoE. Then Arc, then I'd probably go increase crit strikes, and then Ice Nova. So crit strikes just helps you fill out your crit up to about 95 with power charges, as well as the fact that it gives you a lot of extra crit for your Arc, Ice Nova, and Vortex. And when you crit with Inquisitor, once again, as always, you get complete elemental penetration, so you want as high crit as possible. And in the build I get something like, I don't know, 75% chance to crit on arc, which is pretty damn nice. Besides that, of course, you do also get 16% increased elemental damage, which is a pretty nice buff, and also 20% attack speed every time you shield charge, so it makes it just a bit smoother. As well as that, I do have a self-cast Blade Vortex setup, which is Blade Vortex, duration, increased area, and power charge on crit. I press it every, I don't know, 15 seconds or so, just so I can keep up power charges quite easily without having to focus on it anywhere else from curses or anything. And that also does give you the buff to this shit here, because I've recently casted a spell. I gain a bit of extra spell damage, for example. And since I've attacked recently, I have extra cast speed, which makes keeping up the Blade Vortex just a bit easier. So that's the setup I've chosen to go for power charges. Currently, my mana is being reserved by Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, and Warlord's Mark on Blasphemy. That's not, I feel, that good a use of my mana at the moment. I definitely think you could just go with Curse on Hit on both of the two Heralds, but Warlords is the prime generation for my leech, as well as sustaining mana, and it keeps up my endurance charges, and it's pretty reliable on your blasphemy, so it's not a bad idea to have it filled out there, but I certainly think you could go without it with just a curse on hit setup. As well as that, I am using Vinctars, and that's mostly to help take care of Reflect, but it does also keep you up immensely well against hard damage coming into the character. And then I have to run a Shock Immune Silver Flask, but on top of that I'm also shocking everything around me with it, which isn't all that much beneficial because Arc does that quite a lot anyway, but it does help because sometimes you won't be able to shock something with Arc, or it'll shock it before Arc even gets there, so that's pretty good. Not much else to say. Cast when damage taken setup as always with Immortal Call, running Vile Haste. Haven't really set up all my gems completely optimally yet. Blood Rage I use every now and again just to go super fast for frenzies and attack speeds. Lightning Golem is the golem I've chosen just for some extra attack speed because I don't need crit from my Ice Golem, nor do I need accuracy, so I don't need that golem at all. Because as you can see here, my shield charge currently has 67 crit without power charges. I always sustain 5 power charges and 100% hit thanks to Vegan Dagger. There's not much else to say about the character at this point. This is what the passive tree looks like, and the reason to go CI is because basically this exact passive tree is what applies to the energy shield version, which I'll hopefully build tomorrow. And you lose nothing, but you gain energy shield, meaning I gain probably about 5,000 extra life or effective health, and that's going to help me survive against heavy hits a lot better. But I will go over the passive tree real quick at the moment. We have Vile Pact, absolutely essential to deal with Reflect and big hits, I suppose. Dual Sockets, they're pretty good, so try and get as many as you can, because you get good crit multi, life, attack speeds on that sort of jewel. This is a complete waste of a jewel, ignore that one. There you go, life, crit multi, attack speed. Just 3 prop jewels are pretty good. Went for full area, so area there. Grabbed a bunch of crit for spells, and dagger crit here, as well as a bit of generic crit here, and generic crit here. That's what scales all of my crit at the moment for the initial crit off shield charge, and that seems to be enough when you have an 8.8 base with an additional 1.9, so it ends up being about 11 base crit almost. And with power charges, yeah, it ends up being pretty easy to scale the crit. That's all I'll say on the character for now. I look forward to another update, hopefully in a couple of days, as an ES-based version, I would hope, and maybe some tougher content too. In the meantime, that's the character. Thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time.